No promises guaranteed though, because the raw footage is over 4 hours long and I am intimidated. Just like how I'm intimidated by Rhysand's massive Today I'm going to be answering the prompts for the mid-year freakout tag. If you're not familiar, this is a tag that a lot of people in the booktube community do. It's a check-in in the middle of the year where we reflect back on all of the books that we have read. But honestly, it's just an easy way to make content without trying too hard. And you know I'm all about that. So let's go ahead and get started. As of filming this, I have currently finished 30 books. So that should be enough material to answer for these questions. Before I dive into it, I do want to say that I am doing a giveaway because Book of the Month is sponsoring this video. Cue the clip from Future Cindy. Book of the Month is a super popular and fast-growing online service for readers. Their mission is to promote new and emerging authors and help readers discover the books that they love. Every month, their team vets hundreds of books and gives readers a curated selection of books to choose from in both new and early release titles so that you can spend more time reading and less time researching. It is risk-free, meaning that you can skip any month, anytime, and you will not be charged extra. I had their selection for July's books, and they include The People We Keep, a coming-of-age novel about a songwriter on a road trip longing to find a home in the world. Sisters in Arms, a historical debut based on the true story of the all-black battalion of the Women's Army Corps during World War II. 56 Days, a thriller about a couple that moves in together during quarantine until one of them ends up dead in the apartment. We Are the Brennans, a contemporary drama that explores an Irish Catholic family torn apart by secrets. And Razorblade Tears, a thriller about two ex-convicts banding together to solve the mystery of their son's gruesome deaths. The last one would be my personal choice because we love a good revenge story. Giveaway details will be in my description below, but if you want the books guaranteed, you can get your first box for $9.99 using my code READWITHCINDY. This is pretty much the best price you can get for new hardcover books, so don't miss out. And now back to other Cindy. The first prompt says best book you've read so far in 2021. There are 3 books that I have rated 5 stars. I've enjoyed all of them for very different reasons. If I were to evaluate based on the best craft though and the best writing style, I would go with In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. This was a really unique and almost experimental memoir because she details her experiences dealing with an abusive relationship with her girlfriend at the time, but she uses narrative tropes that are common in horror stories in order to frame her experiences. Even though it is nonfiction, it doesn't really feel like nonfiction. It almost feels like a literary novel through a series of vignettes. The writing was very beautiful, very lyrical. I have seen some complaints from people where they thought she was doing too much and she was flexing her MFA, which I totally understand, but I'm a sucker for that kind of shit. Like, I just love descriptive writing, and there was so much of that she tacked on that I was all about it. That was what made the book stand out to me. It was like sad girl vibes, but make it pretty. Prompt number 2 is best sequel that you've read in 2021. There was only one sequel that I enjoyed reading this year, and I don't even know if it counts as a sequel, but we're gonna go with it anyway because the actual sequels that I read were not that good. So I'm gonna go with Act Your Age, Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert. This is the 3rd book of the Brown Sisters series, but it can serve as a standalone too. The way that these romance book series typically works is that each book can be read as its own story, but they're clumped together in a series because usually the characters are related somehow. Like maybe one character was a minor character in the first book, and then you finally get to read their actual story with them falling in love in their next book. But you can totally read them out of order or skip some of them and it wouldn't even matter. There are 3 sisters in this family. This 3rd book focuses on Eve Brown, who is the youngest sister, and she's more of the flighty, very flippant attitude kind of girl, where she's kind of like just going with the flow of things and she doesn't take shit too seriously because she's afraid that if she actually tries to take stuff seriously, then it'll actually mean something and she'll have to deal with failure. And I'm definitely not saying that out of projection or anything like that. So maybe I found the character a little bit relatable. What I've noticed is that the author is very consistent with the way that she writes her books. She definitely takes care into building her characters for each of the protagonists that you follow for each book, because every protagonist in all of these books have had their own inner conflict somehow, and that gets explored even beyond the romance. The romance is more of like a catalyst for them to better improve themselves. So that was the same formula that she did with the Eve Brown book. It was consistent quality with the rest, and I will talk more about it in my monthly wrap-up. Number 3, new release that you haven't read yet but you want to. I am gonna go with Imposter Syndrome. This popped up on my radar because Book of the Month chose it as last month's pick. That is how I have any clue what books are being released in the first place. I really do keep up with Book of the Month. They're not just a sponsor, they're really the only way I stay relevant. This book follows two protagonists. One of them is an executive at a big tech company, but she is actually a Russian spy. The other protagonist is a low-level employee who's just trying to not get fired. She is the only one who discovers the secret that the Russian spy is undercover. This book is a commentary on the sexism within the tech industry in Silicon Valley, which is why it stood out to me because I also work in tech. I also work in Silicon Valley. I also am not a stranger to a little spicy sexism. Thankfully, at my current job, I no longer deal with misogyny, but my current workplace is still a pretty big tech company. So as someone who is very familiar with the kind of environment that the author is critiquing, I'm interested to see if she will be able to handle the subject well. There's a lot of material to critique and make a satire, but it will be a bigger question on whether she can execute it in a nuanced and thought-provoking way. Number 4, most anticipated release for the second half of the year. This book is technically a release from the first half of the year instead of the second, but again, I don't keep up with the new releases that are coming out. This book was published in June, so it's kind of close enough. It is The Chosen and the Beautiful by Nhi Vo. Not only is the cover gorgeous, but the story sounds pretty interesting as well. It is a retelling of The Great Gatsby, but it features a queer Asian protagonist. And I'm really interested in seeing how the story tackles the original theme that The Great Gatsby had about the failed American dream, except this time it's from the perspective of an Asian character, which I think adds a whole new layer to the prospect of the American dream being a fallacy in the first place. That already adds so much depth because when you put that kind of narrative onto a character of a different background, whether they're Asian or any other kind of immigrant group, you're gonna get a vastly different kind of experience and perspective on that. I don't know too much of the details about the actual plot. Like, I don't know if the Asian character is Gatsby or if she's supposed to be some other character. I didn't want to look too deep into it because I like to just dive into books blind and be surprised as I read along. Number 5, biggest disappointment. Now, the key word here is disappointment, meaning that the prompt isn't asking you for what is the worst book that you've read this year, but what was a book that you thought was gonna be good, but it didn't turn out to be that great. And the best answer to this one is gonna be Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell. So when I started this book, I was convinced that I was at least going to rate it 4 stars. The audiobook is very well produced. There's music to set up the atmosphere. There are voice actors who read out loud interview excerpts from the research that the author does. Even the author himself is a very good narrator. He's a great engaging speaker. He sounds like he knows what he's talking about until you actually listen to what he's talking about. And then you're like, wait a minute, you're kind of full of shit. This is a book that aims to analyze the way that we interact with strangers and why so many times those interactions can go wrong. And it takes very popular cases like Sandra Bland being accosted by a police officer, or Brock Turner who assaulted Chanel Miller at a frat party, and all these other controversial cases that happen, and he puts them under a microscope to explain why it ended up so awful. Except instead of peering through a microscope, you realize that you're just looking at it through a clown mask, because now all of a sudden you're diluting the issues of police brutality and sexual assault under miscommunication. He makes a lot of generalizations on these topics. They lack so much nuance that it's almost insulting. He ends up oversimplifying the things that happen, like Brock Turner assaulting Chanel Miller because he was too drunk. There's this whole chapter dedicated to how alcohol will tamper with your communication capabilities, but it does nothing to acknowledge that the case was never even about consent or drinking in the first place, which to me shows that he didn't even do that great of a research into the cases he talked about. He just wanted to name drop a bunch of these for the recognition. And whenever he talks about police brutality, he chalks up to these misunderstandings of one another. But he doesn't go into the racial motivations at all. You can't just pick and choose these cases and try to force them under a generalization. You have to actually consider the context and the nuances and the greater systemic issues that you have totally ignored. I made a whole rant about it in one one of my wrap-ups that I can link somewhere in the video or the description if you want to know more about it. So I was very disappointed that this was definitely not a 4-star read. Not even close, dude. My expectations were here, the bare minimum was here, and the actual book was all the way here. Like, it's not even within the camera view at this point. Number 6, biggest surprise. This is gonna be the total reverse of Talking to Strangers. When I picked up this book, I had such low expectations for it. I ended up enjoying it so much. That is The Inheritance Games. I would have never picked up this book if my friend hadn't wanted to buddy read it with me, but I ended up having so much fun while reading this. That was truly the biggest surprise. This story was pitched as Cinderella meets Knives Out, where this poor girl discovers that she has inherited the grand fortune of this billionaire who has recently passed away. She has to move into his grand estate both for logistical reasons and for safety reasons, because that is a lot of money and she's gotta look out for herself, because you can't trust any of these bitches out here, especially when you're a billionaire and they all want to eat the rich, me included. So she's gotta watch her back even when she's inside the estate, because she also has to deal with 4 of his grandsons. Not everyone is happy that she got the inheritance while they barely got anything. It's a reverse harem, one poor girl with a bunch of rich dudes. Yes, there is a love triangle. Yes, it is corny as fuck. And yes, I enjoyed the fuck out of it. I was like, screw this shit. I'm gonna rate it 5 stars. I don't even care. I had a good time, and sometimes that's the only thing that matters when you read a book. I surprisingly liked all of the characters, which never happens. I found the mystery in the book to be really compelling. It was like a Russian doll where every time you discover something, you just had more questions and you were like, what the fuck is going on? So you keep on reading to try to figure out more, but you never get the fucking answer. So I'm definitely gonna be reading the second book, buddy reading with the same friend again, so we can text each other about it and rant to each other about which boy we would pick. That's right, that's the peak of literature right there. Number 7, favorite new author, either debut or new to you. I don't really have favorite authors, but based on everyone that I've read this year, someone that I discovered is Ruby Hamad. She published her debut book, White Tears, Brown Scars. It's a book that talks about how white feminism is often used as a weapon of white supremacy and patriarchy against people of color, specifically Black and Indigenous women. I also appreciated how she provided a perspective that was outside of the US, because she is a Middle Eastern woman who lives in Australia. It was nice to see stories that weren't so American-centric. Hopefully all her future books will be just as spicy as this one was. Number 8, newest fictional crush. I don't really get fictional crushes, nor do I get real life crushes nowadays, but if I had to choose based on the books I read this year, I'm going to cheat a little bit with one of the books I read, which was the novelization for Julie and the Phantoms. This is technically a show, and it was a show that I discovered last year, but considering I read the book adaptation for it this year, it still doesn't count. Now, the book adaptation was not great. It was basically the same story rehashed, but not even in a satisfying way, because the author ended up cutting out a lot of important scenes that were in this show, and then she didn't even add anything new in the books that we didn't get from the show. The whole thing was just pointless, but the quality of the book aside, I would say my fictional crush would be Luke from that show / book. Okay, he was totally boring and dry as the book. You can't evaluate this based on the book. You really have to evaluate it based on the show. I am cheating here, but I do have a crush on the character that he was based on in the book that was originally on the show. Does that make sense? What I'm trying to say in a very long-winded way is that I continue to like himbos. The premise of the story is that there's a young girl who recently lost her mother, who used to share her passion for music, but because her mother passed away, she no longer has any soul for it, because she feels like a part of her died along with her mom. But then one day, when she's cleaning out the storage space where all of their old musical instruments are, she ends up meeting the ghost of 3 boys that died in 1995 when they were a boy band, and they accidentally ate bad hot dogs that killed them. What I like about this premise is that if you haven't watched the show, you would think I'm making all this shit up right now, but I'm not. She ends up being the only living person who can see them, and they also discover that whenever they play music together, that is the only time where the 3 boys are visible to everyone else. So they end up becoming a band called Julie and the Phantoms. It's a super cute show. It's very much like Disney vibes, and I'm picking Luke as my fictional crush much, he is the lead singer of the boy band, but now he's like the co-singer of the new band because let's face it, the girl is the best singer out of all of them. Facts are facts. What's funny is that when I watched the show, pretty much within the first few episodes, I was not into this guy at all. I turned to my friend who I was watching it with and I said, I don't understand why they keep on making this guy the main character, because I just thought he was so cheesy and corny. Catch me 8 episodes later watching the finale and crying my eyes out because he is so sweet and he loves her so much and he would do anything for her and his friend. He's like a golden retriever in the form of a boy. Also, his acting is terrible. My friend and I were making fun of it in the first few episodes because every time he talked, he would always gesture his hands dramatically where he'd be like, Julie, you don't understand. We gotta play our music, Julie. And so we would make fun of him every time, and then catch me again 8 episodes later, he's having some dramatic ass scene and I'm tearing up because I'm like, oh my God, he's been through so much. Sometimes you just want a boy who's stupid. That's my only taste in men. Number 9, newest favorite character. This isn't necessarily my favorite character, but I would say that she was the most interestingly written character. That is the teenage girl from the book A Tale for the Time Being. The premise of the book is that there's an author who discovers this lunchbox that gets washed up on the shore. Inside the lunchbox, there is this diary that this 16-year-old girl has written all the way from Tokyo. When you read the diary, you learn more about this girl's life. The author did a surprisingly really good job at writing the voice of a 16-year-old girl because she did such a great balance of having the character be kind of like silly and flippant, but at the same time, she's also going through a lot of shit. Like, she is dealing with bullying, she's dealing with her father being suicidal, she herself is also starting to feel suicidal. She has all these dark thoughts, but she expresses them in such like a weird flippant way that I think is very reflective of our generation today. Because how else are we supposed to express our trauma than through humor as a coping mechanism? She had a very strong personality too. She was very spunky. She would speak her mind and be very candid about things. At the same time, you could tell that she had a lot of depth to her character because she would observe the world around her and wonder about social constructs like time. Like, she goes on this whole spiel about what she thinks time represents. It's one of those things where it could easily be something corny or cheesy or something that the author obviously just pours out as a way to tie into the theme of the book. But the way that the author did it just made sense with the voice of this character. I was very engaged with this character throughout the story, more so than the character that discovers her diary in the first place. Like, whenever it was her chapters, I was like, snooze. But whenever the 16-year-old girl was like, hey, I hate my life, I want to die, but in a quirky way, I was like, ooh, girl, tell me more. Because you and I, we might be more similar than you think. Number 10, a book that made you cry. I haven't cried reading any book this year, so to change the question up a little bit, the saddest book that I read this year would be Crying in H Mart. I mean, the title alone makes it the right answer for this prompt. This is a memoir written by the indie singer-songwriter Japanese Breakfast. The main focus is actually about her mother, who recently passed away from cancer. 50% of it minimum is descriptions of Asian food. She describes it so much because that is so heavily ingrained with the memories that she has of her mother. So she'll learn all these recipes. She'll go to the Korean grocery stores to look up recipes that her mom used to make. She'll end up crying in the grocery stores, as the title suggests, because this shit is getting too real. So it's really a way of her reclaiming the food, the gifts, the language, the history that her mom had given her. You can just really tell how much she grieved over losing her mom. It's just sad because it's something that everyone has to deal with. 11, a book that made you happy. I'm trying not to repeat the same answer for these prompts, but there's no way that I can choose any other book because, first of all, I don't really read many happy books. Second of all, the true answer to this is gonna be a repeat, and that is The Inheritance Games. I had a lot of fun reading this book. A lot of it is thanks to me buddy reading it with one of my friends because it was just so much fun being able to text her and formulate all these theories about what's gonna happen. So the book gave me a happy experience of being able to bond with my friend and chat about the book with her and get into all the juicy details and plot twists. Number 12, the most beautiful book you have bought this year or received. I actually did buy a book this year, and that was the collector's edition of City of Bones by Cassandra Clare. The reason why I bought got it was because Hulu wanted to do a sponsored Instagram post that would highlight a show based on a book. The only book to screen adaptation that I haven't seen yet on Hulu was Shadowhunters. So I decided to get a City of Bones books just for the sake of having an Instagram post. I know, typical bookish influencer. But I did end up reading the book. I did end up making content for it, so it was not all to waste. Fortunately, since it was a collector's edition, I can say that this was a beautiful book cover, especially in comparison to the original with the overly saturated muscle. I detest covers that use pictures of actual people. I'm so glad that these popular yet trashy young adult books are finally getting collector's editions so that I don't have to be embarrassed when I read that shit in public. Instead, I can just have a fancy cover and look like I'm reading something literary. Although you could argue that Jace taking a spaghetti bath was indeed literary. Also, because Hulu needed me to send over a draft within the same week that I signed a contract with them, that meant I had to log into my sister's account to use her Amazon Prime so that I could get the book right away. Which means that when I ordered the book, she saw it in her order history and she texted me about it and she was like, I saw you order City of Bones and I am judging you right now. I was like, you don't understand. This is like a business thing. I didn't even know how to explain it because she doesn't know about this whole YouTube, Instagram influencer bullshit that I do. I keep that a secret from her due to my shame. Either way, it was gonna look shameful for me regardless. Damn. Last question. What books do you need to read by the end of the year? So many. There is a never-ending list of books that I want to read that I will never get to. So to shorten it, I am only gonna say 5 books that I know for sure that I will read by the end of the year. Unless I find out that I'm not into the story and I drop them. But I will try to start these books and give it a shot anyway. The first book is gonna be Girls Made of Snow and Glass. This is a Snow White retelling. I just wanna pick up this book because I want to read more young adult. Another book I'm gonna read is One Last Stop. I'm actually currently reading this. I decided to pick it up due to the hype, but I'm surprisingly enjoying it so far. Hopefully I can finish that soon and be able to talk about it in my monthly wrap up. There are 2 books that I plan on buddy reading with my friends. That is The Echo Wife, which is a thriller book, and The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. I have no idea what the book is about. I just decided to read it with my friend because the title sounded interesting. And then the last book, oh actually I want to buddy read this with a friend too. That is The Midnight Library. All I know is that the story is an allegory for depression, which is my main motivation to read it because that is also something that my novel is about. So I'm curious to see how the author tackles it. I'm just hoping to be inspired by all of these books. Good or bad, I think that they all can help my learnings of the world and of myself and my preferences in some way. No book is ever wasted when you're reading it. Hold up, I know what you're gonna say. I'm gonna stop you before you even write the comment. Oh really? You don't think Avatar was a waste of time, Cindy? I have no answer to that question. I also know people are gonna comment, when are you gonna post your A Court of Silver Flames review already? We've been waiting, we don't care about you, talk about other books. I am going to try to post my review video finally in the next video coming up after this one. No promises guaranteed though, because the raw footage is over 4 hours long and I am intimidated. Just like how I'm intimidated by Resen's massive dick. I don't like where this video has headed, so I'm just gonna go ahead and end it here. Unsubscribe from my channel. Goodbye. I just without the sexual, I'm too scared to date, so I've just been by myself. I'm watching a Disney movie and I slowly start to sweat as the jasmine's dancing.